more that you can lean into your own personal discomfort, say what needs to be said in a non-offensive way, the more you make the world a better place.
All right, gentlemen, we are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. Welcome, social media, to this impromptu but very important discussion about something that occurred this week that captured the world's attention. Two climbers ascended the spire of the Empire State Building, obviously defeated security, obviously were quite capable and skilled and had a plan, got to the top of the spire, ground New York City's immediate area around the Empire State Building to a halt, and flew a flag that was essentially a Jimi Hendrix quote: "When the power of love overcomes the love of power, we will have world peace." There was evidently a marital proposal on the spire, and then these people were very quickly taken into custody. While the news media would kind of cause everyone to relax about the benevolence of the event, there were many, many people who were not feeling so assured by what they were witnessing. Professionals and first responders rapidly came to the environment to assess what was going on. We're at a time in our history and in New York with the 250th that this was probably not the ideal time to perform a stunt like this. And I couldn't think of two gentlemen with more experience in considering what to potentially do under these circumstances than the great Gary Noesner and Jack Cambria. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure.
So I'm going to run in the background of this discussion for a few minutes, just so folks get a sense of what we saw. And, you know, millions of people saw this. What you're looking at here is two people on the top of really what is an antenna. And that antenna is on the top of the building at approximately 1,500 feet. There are no harnesses or belay systems. These people are well-known free climbers. There was a Netflix documentary about these people in 2024, and we did not know this at the time. What you're looking at here are two people who just emerge on the top of one of the most iconic buildings in the world, and they're engaging and sending a message. Jack, you were the longest standing commander of the NYPD's hostage negotiation team. I think the first question is, would you have been dispatched to something like this in the early moments? And if so, what would you be thinking?
Well, first off, thank you for inviting me, Andy, and to your audience, hello. The answer to your question is yes, I would have been dispatched in my capacity as the hostage team commander or as a hostage negotiator, because until we have access to what was exactly going on here, what do we have here, we don't know. We would have to be there in order to establish some kind of dialogue with these individuals. All right. As you said, initially we didn't know what it was. Was it a terrorist act? Were they looking to disable the cables on the antenna, cutting off communication not only to the building but to all the news stations that kind of broadcast from that antenna, which there were many? Was it a subterfuge to throw off law enforcement, where they might be looking to operate another terrorist act in another part of the city? As a side note, very briefly, when I was a young police officer, to give some context to that point of view, I remember there was a signal 1013. 1013 is the radio code in NYPD for a police emergency. We need assistance 5 minutes ago, right? So what had happened was these very clever individuals, they stole a Ford Plymouth Fury. That was the vehicle that was being used at the time by detectives. And I'm going back to the late 1980s. And they got one of the the police bubbles you used to put on top of the car when you want to get through red lights as a unmarked police car. They were able to obtain one of these bubbles, and they parked the car in the middle of a park, Dyker Park, which is on this end of the precinct. They call in on phone, police officer shot, middle of Dyker Park. So every available unit responds to Dyker Park. And they see this car, they see the red light flashing, right? And there's no police detectives there. And now a massive search starts commencing around the park. Simultaneously, what is happening, the other side of the precinct, here, there was a furrier, and they were breaking into the furrier and stealing furs.
Oh,
So my point to the story, the point that I just made, was could this have been one of those incidents, right? So as it winds up being a publicity stunt. These individuals have done this before, which came out. Just the last year, I understand from what I read that Netflix had done a documentary on these individuals for these exploits.
yes.
And it was nothing more, as it wound up being a commercial for them, right? And
Yeah.
well, okay, let's get engaged at the same time.
Right.
So, but to get back to your question, yes, indeed, if there was a dialogue that was to be established, that would have been done mostly by the negotiators. And that would have been done in various different fashions. Emergency service, which my background also was 16 years in emergency service prior to my assignment with the hostage team. So I can speak on a firsthand qualitative nature on that. The issue would have gotten up there and they would have tried to hand off a cell phone so the negotiators could negotiate, or the emergency service unit has some negotiation training as well. And they would have started a process of trying to establish a dialogue and finding out, why are we here today?
Precisely. I think the why here is the big question mark. Gary, an introduction to your background is really not needed, but I'll simply say that, your experience is globally known and nearly unprecedented. In your capacity in the FBI, if you were working in the FBI's New York field office, would the FBI have interest in this? Would you be paying attention? Would you be thinking about collaboration? What are the opinions you'd be forming right now if you were sitting behind your desk and learning that this just popped?
I'd be saying it's Jack's problem and let him take care of it. Unless there's some indication of terrorism, and Jack brought up, I think, a good point. You have no idea at the beginning of this what's going on. We know about these people now. They're Netflix and doing this dangerous stunt to get publicity and so forth. But you probably don't know that as it's going on. And now we've got to place officers in extreme danger to try to make sure these people get down safely. And what's their motivation? Why are they here? What are they trying to accomplish? Is this terrorism, or is this a bunch of nut jobs? Is this protesters? What is it? Either way, it doesn't matter. People's lives are put in danger in trying to resolve this peacefully, and it's an extremely dangerous situation. And I think ultimately the charges that are brought against them have to be pretty strenuous and provide a real disincentive for doing this sort of thing again.
In your collective experience, gentlemen, I'm sure that you have been dispatched to numerous events where the response is heavy. We bring our trucks, we bring our people, we bring our training, we bring our equipment, and what winds up happening is that the activities of the people that necessitated the response are not aligned, let's say, completely with what we are prepared to do, what you are prepared to do. Your general thoughts on the impacts that has on the responding workforce. Are you still debriefing afterwards to try to make lemonade out of lemons? Are you having conversations about the things that could have happened, and still trying to derive learning from this? What are the potential after action implications of responding to an event of this kind of magnitude, but then learning that what's happening here was something more benevolent in nature. Jack, your thoughts?
Well, the first thing I'd be thinking is, has the new director of security for the Empire State Building been named yet? Because that's just a matter of time, I think, So the first thing I would be looking at is how are they able to bypass security in such a manner? It's a secure building. They have a whole uniformed security force in place in the Empire State Building. I know that because I've been there many times. I've actually had a rescue on the observation deck of the Empire State Building several years back when I was still doing what I was doing, and the amount of security personnel is huge. It's a rather large agency, that they have there. So how was these two individuals able to do that? So apparently they did their homework, no doubt. They're professionals in what they do, having done this in many other locations, high-rise locations, and filming it and then putting it on their YouTube channel. So they obviously did their homework. They no doubt were up on I think they said the 102nd floor. The observation deck is on the 86th floor. So they had to get up to the upper floors in order to see, and recognize a compromise of how they, of a security breach and how they can get in there, no doubt. But then to answer your question about the debrief, that goes without question after every major incident, and this is one of those. What could we have done better? How could we have approached this in a different fashion if we had to,
Right.
But mostly your training does kick in, and most of the time the response is, well, we did everything that we could have done that was within our training. Maybe we have to expand our training to include, X, Y, or Z. But there is a debrief after every incident, and you see, replicate what has worked in the past, and maybe not. So that has not worked in the past. Maybe we shouldn't try that again. It didn't work the last time, right?
Right. Gary, as you gaze at this, if you were on scene, what are the considerations that you would be making regarding how to make contact with these people? It would seem that the conditions that they've presented to responders are very constrictive. I mean, unless a drone had a PA system, what are some ways in which you would even consider, like, what would your process be to try to determine how to make contact with these people? And I would imagine that you have, in your experience, episodes of crisis response where people have done similar things to make it more difficult to engage with them in a dialogue. Your thoughts?
Well, obviously, you've got to try to make contact. And the first priority for me, and I know it is for Jack, is officer safety. And can we engage with these people in a manner that keeps our personnel safe from harm? I mean, it's not just that they could be subjected to some action from these people, but something can break, an officer can slip or fall or lose their life. And for me, once you've determined that this is not an act of terrorism, but a stunt, and I think that was determined fairly early, then I think you have to run through some decisions here. One is, does our focus give them more of what they want? Do we overreact or do we underreact? And I think there's a balance law enforcement has to achieve. I worked a situation helping telephonically at a city in the Southwest many years ago where a guy climbed up a radio tower and he was going to commit suicide. And, there was quite a large law enforcement response, lights, sirens, hundreds of people. And one of the first things I told them is, now that we know that this person's engaged in self-harm, well, let's not feed that appetite for attention, and let's back away. Let's turn off the lights and sirens and send home most of the officers and kind of diffuse the whole event and sort of take the party away. Now, that's a little harder when they're on top of the Empire State Building, for God's sake. but them and King Kong, are in a unique position. Right. But
right.
And you talk about innovation, and you mentioned it, Andy, maybe in the future, NYPD says, you know what? We need a drone that can communicate. We need something other than placing officers in grave danger because of these two nut jobs up there. But primarily for me is you look at the security. How can we make sure it doesn't happen again? And then, frankly, I think there has to be severe punishment for these people. There has to be a disincentive for this sort of thing. Further, I would conduct an investigation. Did Netflix or anybody else know about this? Did they have foreknowledge of it? Did they provide support?
Oh.
Did they set up cameras? Because now you got a conspiracy, and this is a whole different kettle of fish. Now, I don't know that happened, and I'm not saying that was the case.
Yeah. Good
But
point.
that's something that, with this sort of thing where they're trying to get publicity for a documentary, boy, it raises a lot of questions for me that I would like to know the answers to and hold people responsible.
Absolutely. And in New York, we have no bail under very stringent circumstances. It's got to be one of the top 7 crimes, a rape, a murder, that type, for bail to kick in. But in this case, there was no bail because we saw them a couple hours after the incident of them walking out of the police station. And what they do, they give them a return court date, and they will have to appear. And if they do not, then there'll be warrants for their arrest. So this, they're already out enjoying the publicity of all of this. There's probably going to be a smack on the wrist when they do go back to court. A monetary fine, maybe greatly. Maybe they'll give them, 1 and 2 months in jail. I don't even know if that would be the case in New York City because the jails are so grossly overcrowded. So it's going to be a smack on the wrist for them. And meanwhile, they have all this beautiful
Publicity.
Their way of thinking, publicity. Yeah.
The other thing is, if they're not U.S. citizens or permanent residents, I mean, I would really consider taking action to prevent their reentry into the United States. They've abused the privilege of being visitors here.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the federal government can come in to support NYPD's actions. And I think this should be looked at in a holistic fashion. We laugh about this now. A bunch of nuts went up there. They advertised for themselves and they got engaged and no harm done. Well, that's a pretty simplistic view of it. I mean, we had officers endanger their lives to try to help these people to make sure that they didn't get hurt performing this stunt. And that's unacceptable for me. I mean, it's just simply unacceptable.
I want to thank you both for underscoring that notion, because that's certainly not what you're hearing in the media overall. There aren't many people talking about the tactical considerations, the tactical risks, the risks to personnel, and the potential downstream implications if their motivation wasn't benevolent. I mean, Gary, you're the first person that I've heard articulate to what extent this may have been quietly, conspiratorially pre-planned and footage potentially captured. Now, listen, we're having a theoretical discussion. No one here is accusing any agency of getting involved in that activity, but the situation is fertile soil to think about those considerations. And to the extent that the timing of this is around a weekend where there's a lot of people in New York City, there's a lot of planned activity, there's a lot of contention and strife going on in the world. I will say that I was caught in the center of the Knicks parade just a couple of weeks ago while I was there. And I have to admit that I was struck by, as I called it, like being in a happy concentration camp. Everybody was completely congested, but the spirit of benevolence and people coming out to support their team was truly present. So, and I think statistically, there were very few incidents when you look at the enormity of people in the City Hall area of downtown Manhattan. But be that as it may, that event brought the city to a completely different status. It was a standstill. Everybody was on foot. Entire streets were closed. It was amazing to experience that. And on the heels of something like that, for then this to occur, you're the only people that I know that are raising these concerns publicly. And I want to thank you so much for underscoring the safety part, because there's not only the exposure, the altitude, the obstacles. that antenna is radiating an extraordinary amount of RF. And these people invariably, unless they figured out, like to your point, Jack, what if their motivation was to cut off communication, was to disable that antenna? If they did not do that, they exposed themselves to an extraordinary amount of radio frequency and electromagnetic energy. No doubt, where there are going to be health implications, or could be. So,
You know, Andy, I keep coming back to the officer safety issue. I was through the years involved in two separate situations where police officers were killed in events related to, but not directly engaged with perpetrators doing things. In other words, they were a helicopter flying to help out in response to a mission. I mean,
right.
There is always a certain element of risk, and we shouldn't discount that. And I can't think of anything greater. Now, I'm scared of heights. I would have been on the ground floor saying, Jack, go get him, buddy. And
Yeah.
I'm down here with the popcorn when you solve it. But that's a dangerous thing. I mean, that is way up there. And I heard a little bit of a recording of one of the officers calmly talking to these people, say, you can't be up there. And I sure applaud that officer's self-control. There's no better city in the world for something like this to happen, to have a more professional capability than NYPD, but it's dangerous. And just because we have those capabilities doesn't mean there's not risk that's involved in this. And it's, like I say, I think the punishment has to fit the crime. And I would certainly want to know if others were involved that need to face the criminal justice system.
One of the charges was that, Gary, reckless endangerment. And I think it rose to the felony level. They had burglary charges in there. They had criminal trespass charges in there, and a host of one or two others, I think it was. But so they should be sentenced to something substantial, hopefully.
I mean, if you're going to get 10 years for getting a piece of a paint chip from a reflecting pool, you ought to get a lot more than that for climbing up on top of the Empire State Building.
That's right. There you go. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And again, New York City is a very liberal city, so we never know how that's going to go. So we'll see what we see when we see it, no doubt.
Well, yeah,
Jack,
I just think it's important for people to understand the risk and danger here. And it looks like, it's a fun stunt, and people have done things before to get attention. Whether it's Evel Knievel or what's his name that did the tight wire between, all that stuff. Yeah, it's real cutesy until somebody gets killed, and then It's not so funny.
Right. Jack, as we were sitting here, I was going to quickly share it. There's that wonderful picture of you in a Class 3 harness with positioning rings on a structural part of the bridge. I was trying to find it. I wanted to share it here. You could, because you've been at elevation doing this work and training to do this work.
Yeah, so that's the job of the emergency service unit within New York City. So the emergency service unit, for your viewers that might not be aware of it, is the tactical branch of the New York City Police Department. Most cities, if not all cities across the U.S., even internationally, they call it SWAT team. So they might, viewers might know the term. But in New York City, we call it emergency service because it is that. It is the SWAT team. However, it's also a high-risk rescue unit. So these officers, although, to Gary's point, although they were, they're well-trained and doing this kind of work, it's a 6-month school when you get into emergency service, and a good portion of that is dedicated to high-risk rescues. And this harness is involved, and, make sure you're locked in while you're climbing these ladders.
Sure.
But to Gary's point, there's always that element of danger, because as you're taking your carabiner off and putting it ready to hook it onto another rung, that's a time when you can maybe trip, fall. It's very windy up there, and be killed. So it's very, very dangerous indeed. But that's the reason we call it service. So it's emergency service. So just a little plug for the emergency service unit. There's a saying in New York City that when a citizen needs help, they call the police. When the police need help, they call emergency service.
They call ESU. Yeah.
And that was the case here. This was beyond the capability or the training of patrol officers. So enter now the emergency service unit in order to do this job.
As a kind of final theme of discussion here, let's say you could make contact let's play with this idea for a moment. Let's say you could make contact. What are your initial statements, questions? If they're able to hear you and you're able to hear them, let's say for a moment we were able to ID them, notwithstanding their masks. There's been a determination that they likely have their phone. There's a belief that and as it turns out, by the way, they took selfies up there. And you made a call and they answered. Gary, what's your initial what's your initial salvo, if you will, if they say hello? Hi, yeah, I'm here.
I'd say, hey, my name's Gary. I'm with the police department. We're very concerned about your safety. Like you to come down right away. And we're concerned that you can fall and hurt yourself. I wouldn't, give them the option of talking about what they want first. I would just ask them gently what we want of them. Now, they may get into another discussion and you pursue wherever that goes and say, I understand what you're saying. You've had your moment of, you've captured everyone's attention. You got the notoriety and the coverage that you wanted. Now we're talking about safety, your safety and the safety of others. And there will be some processing that has to occur relative to this with the criminal justice system. The fact that you cooperated and came down when we asked will go a long way. If you continue to resist, that's not going to serve your benefit. And I would just be calm and direct and honest and, not try to fool them or anything. Just say, I wouldn't say, please come down. I just say, come down. This is, we're telling you to come down right now.
Yeah. Jack, your thoughts?
So in hostage negotiation work, we deal with essentially 3 different personality types. And I know it's much more complicated than that, but just for purposes of this discussion, the 3 different personality types are the nice person, there's the difficult person, and then there's the backstabber. So the nice person, they're nice people. You don't really need a negotiation strategy for nice people. They'll generally do what you ask. Sir, madam, I'm afraid you can't come down the street at this time. There's a police incident going on. Oh, okay, officer, be safe. And they're on their way. The difficult person, well, they call it difficult because they want to know why. Not why in a curious type of fashion, but why in an aggressive manner. Why, Officer Cambria? They're making sure that they know my name, that I know that they know my name because of my name tag.
Yeah.
I live on this block. Why can't I go down my block? So they want to know why in an aggressive manner. And you absolutely need a negotiation strategy for these individuals. And then the third category are the backstabbers, which are very hard to identify because they smile at you. And then as soon as you leave them, they're on their way to the precinct or station house, making a phone call, making a civilian complaint. But I would categorize these individuals as nice people. Yes, they committed a criminal act. Reckless endangerment. They caused danger to the lives of police officers and other people around them. But personality-based, they were nice and they were compliant. So once the officer said, you got to come down, you can't be up here, you got to come on down, they started to come down immediately. So a negotiation strategy wasn't absolutely necessary with these individuals. If they would have been more difficult, that would have changed it. I would always teach that we as negotiators, and I think Gary would buy into this, we should look to embrace the difficult people of the world, not physically, of course, but philosophically, embrace them because ultimately, if we do that, they will then become our greatest teachers. And they will teach us strategies of how to deal with the difficult people out there. But in this case, I think they were compliant and they're going to be charged appropriately, and they have been charged appropriately. But it wasn't much of a negotiation strategy in this instance, at least by my account, by what I think.
Andy, can I bring up a point that I think is important?
Yeah, please.
This is spilt milk. Okay, it's done. I mean, it's already happened. We couldn't prevent it. Dealt with it as effectively as could be done. But what I think is important now is that police officials, the mayor, whatever, needs to engage in what I would call a preemptive negotiation with future violators. And that's how important the message that we send publicly about why this was a concern and why this was reckless and inappropriate and endangered the lives of police officers. That's a really important step to take so that it doesn't become a carnival of, hey, isn't this cool? He got engaged up on the Empire State Building. No, this is a serious situation. There's a reason we try to prevent people from climbing up there. It's for their own safety and the safety of our officers that might have to respond and assist them. So, I think those kind of comments need to be made, at whatever level, police officials, the mayor's office, whatever, to try to let future violators know that this will not be tolerated.
I think that's a great place to kind of wrap it up, because we know what we know now, but at the same time, the value of this incident really serves, let's say, the needs of responders and community to fully recognize that this may not have ended up this way. This could have been something completely different. And if it was, and there was malevolence involved, we must take steps to prevent something like this. Like, this is a gift that it was benevolent. We couldn't really get there. We took them into custody. We appreciate that they wanted to get married and try to send a benevolent message. However, there are an extraordinary number of vulnerabilities that this incident brought into awareness. And my goodness, I have to imagine that an event like this can motivate other kinds of activity. This may have sent a very strong message to people who are malevolent actors about what precisely they can do. Maybe someone never even entertained the idea of defeating security at the Empire State Building because they anticipated they have their own uniformed police force there, to Jack's point. And now they're witnessing people with benevolent intention defeating security and getting on top of the spire. I mean, if that doesn't send some kind of intelligence value to bad actors, I don't know what would.
Yeah, I mean, we've certainly seen it in school shootings and other things. We give too much attention to some of these folks for pulling off a stunt. And in that way, we unintentionally encourage others to try to seek the same kind of limelight. And we've got to be careful how we, in post-incident, address this and make sure the public understands and appreciates the real risk here and has an ability to comprehend the vulnerabilities and the problems that this faces. I just can think of a million ways a police officer could have had an accident up there and been seriously injured or killed. I mean, it's just, I've just seen it too many times, and we have to keep that in mind. Somebody's got to go get these people down.
Yeah.
Okay? Somebody's got to do it. It's not going to be Gary, but somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. Law enforcement, yeah.
Well, listen, gentlemen, in as much as we really didn't talk much about active listening and negotiation skills, we still talked about the considerations of the negotiator and their team. This was an event that reached global visibility. And I know for me, when I was witnessing it, when I saw masked people in black fit on the top of that spire, I felt extremely unsettled. Before we knew there was benevolent intention, even with the flag didn't sufficiently communicate to me, oh, everything's going to be fine. I found my imagination wandering into, sending that kind of a message and then leaping off the spire with a backpack bomb, or, there could have been any number of kind of very negative downstream implications to all of this. And maybe it's because of the way I'm wired and my own experiences and career and profession and relationships with you. But I found the entire event unsettling, and I found the coverage of the event and even the way people are talking about it. Someone actually said to me today, look at how beautiful that was. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Beautiful in the biggest city in the world. I mean, yeah, in a very constricted worldview, beautiful. But when I consider something to be beautiful and just describe it as that, there is no malevolent possibility associated with it. I don't look at a poisonous flower as beautiful. It's beautiful and dangerous.
And Andy, as a side note, as to the level of dangerousness for the police officers that responded, the inconvenience to the city. I had a individual one time on the rooftop of the Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, which is located on 42nd Street between 7th and 8th Avenue. And I was up there a few hours with this guy talking to him, and I was able to see all the way down to the east side, the FDR Drive, to the west side, the West Side Highway, or West Street, and traffic was just stopped because they were diverting traffic off 42nd Street between 7th and 8th Avenue. And the inconvenience to these individuals, they were hours in their car just to get one block. So that's something that we don't really think about too much, but, people were really upset about that.
I almost think a collection of the costs to the city should be part of that PR campaign or PR response. This cost us $1 million in officer overtime and it disrupted this and so forth and so on.
I agree.
The other thing I wanted to say, Andy, because we didn't touch on it sufficiently, but we went back to if we were communicating with these people as a negotiator, if we got a dialogue going, the first thing I would begin to press with them is they'd already achieved their goal. Okay.
Yeah.
You did it. You pulled it off. You got the world's attention. You got your engagement. You did everything you want. Now, moving forward, this is only going to get worse. So let's work together, get you down safely, and we'll deal with the consequences after everyone's safe and we're out of harm's way. That would be the approach I would take, because in fact, it's true. They've already gained all they're going to get out of this. Once they've gotten up to where we don't want them to be.
Yeah, they'll get their payday from Netflix if they were to sell this story again.
Sure.
So, we have a comment here in the comment section from James Pearson. He's a retired police chief in Texas.
Hello, Chief.
Every sensational incident becomes a training and correction opportunity for first responders. Unfortunately, for the other side as well. Agreed. We kind of touched on that.
Absolutely.
And thank you for that comment. Well, listen, gentlemen, I know you're both busy. I want to thank you so much for taking the time. Jack, I was able to find and coordinate this picture.
Who's
Jack,
that guy with black hair? I don't know.
Yeah, look at that. Jack, tell us about this picture a little bit for the audience.
Well, this is a training exercise. So talking about, training earlier, this is on the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. It's the bridge that links the borough of Brooklyn to Staten Island. And we were just on a Sunday morning just doing some training because this is a very popular bridge in New York City. I think the number one bridge for suicidal jump is the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. Over 2,000 jumpers have committed suicide there since its opening in 1939. But this is our version of the Golden Gate Bridge in the New York City area. So there's dozens of jumpers that climb these railings, even though there's security at the end of that girder at the end there, but they find their way over it and they get to the top. So we have to train in order to kind of get up there and hopefully encounter these individuals before they jump to try to save them from themselves, rearrange their thinking process from what they want it to be to what we want it to be. So that's what we're looking at.
Andy, many years ago, I traveled to Australia and did some instruction for New South Wales Police Department in Sydney. Great folks. And they took me up on the Sydney Harbour Bridge because
How cool is that? Oh my gosh.
And even though I'm scared of heights, I kept my own counsel on that because I didn't want them to think the FBI was wimpy. And it's a tourist thing now. They take people up there, but back then they didn't. So I'm up there, a similar picture to what is shown with Jack here. And what I would say on that is, it's one thing to be up there and concerned about your own safety and those of your fellow officers, but now to put on my creative negotiation cap at the same time, we're asking an awful lot of police officers to put them in such an environment with such high stakes involved. In the case of what Jack was training for, or in Australia there, we're talking about suicide. So there's a very realistic chance that this may not end the way we want. And so you add that complexity to the adverse environment in which the officers are operating, I mean, we're asking an awful lot. I mean, I don't think overtime pay covers that sufficiently.
That's right. That's right. Spot on point on that, Gary. Thank you.
Comment from a gentleman in the chat right now, screen name I don't quite know, on YouTube. We've had the same thing on the Narrows Bridge. The Narrows Bridge is here in, you remember the story of Galloping Gertie. When we were together, guys, we were very close to that bridge in Tacoma when we filmed Icons of Influence. The Narrows Bridge is the name of that bridge. And I certainly have responded on our Marine unit many, many times to recovery operations. And then, of course, we have our friend, Kevin Briggs, who has responded on the Golden Gate to, the comment is Dan Gapsch. Thank you, Dan. He just texted me to say, hey, that's me in the comments.
Hello, Dan. Thank you for your comment.
Yeah. I've responded to numerous recovery operations for someone who has jumped off that bridge. And I have to say, fortunately, we were not the crew that found the deceased. That's a very traumatic moment when you find someone who's jumped off a bridge. And, encountering any traumatic ending for a human being is traumatic for the responder, no doubt. And I just want to thank you both so very much for sharing your experience and wisdom, and for your generosity of spirit to make some contributions that others can think about who are in the first response disciplines doing this work. And right now, I would say, not feeling very validated as a result of this event by the media, because the event itself, to your points, very, very astute points, is not being seen widely for what it actually was. It was a glimpse into vulnerabilities where malevolence, if given a hold, could really have done some harm to human beings. And I want to thank you for raising the awareness that you've been able to raise in this discussion. It's very, very meaningful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Delightful. Well, listen, I enjoyed being able to call upon both of you to debrief and deconstruct events like this. And should they occur in the future, you can anticipate that I'm going to call again. And I wish you a blessed holiday weekend. I hope that you enjoy time with family and friends, and that people are safe, and that we get to enjoy a peaceful weekend where we celebrate our nation. Thank you so very much for your service to our nation and to our communities as well. It's greatly appreciated.
Thanks, Andy. Great to see you, Jack.
And to you, dear Gary. Be well, my dear friend.
All right, gentlemen.
Be well.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
More that you can lean into your own personal discomfort, say what needs to be said in a non-offensive way, the more you make the world a better place.